on this Sunday night, feeling the heat. Record high temperatures are fueling wildfires in Western Canada.
We've broken over 500 daily records in the past, say, 100 days.
Winds of change. Voters across BC choose new leadership in local elections. Ontario calling. An Ottawa doctor leaves a message for pro-vaccine health workers in Alberta.
Come on down, we've got a job for you.
Plus, game over. A new study finds a link between video games and a potentially deadly heart condition.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. 1 week after Thanksgiving, but instead of bracing for winter, Western Canada is enjoying an extended summer. Across BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan and the Northwest Territories, temperatures are climbing to record highs of 30 degrees in some spots. While many welcome the warmer weather, those hot and dry conditions are also fueling fall wildfires. Right now, there are several fires burning in BC. The regions there colored in red are most at risk, with extremely dry conditions posing a very serious fire risk. And it's a similar picture in Alberta, with more than 35 wildfires burning in just the last week. As Heather Yourex-West reports, those tinder dry conditions are forecast to get worse.
In Calgary, the trees certainly show we're in the midst of autumn. But the temperatures suggest otherwise. It's t-shirt weather, maybe even shorts, at a time of year when we often see snow start to fall.
It's really been not just a 1 day or a 1 week wonder. This has been a prevailing kind of feature. It's a high pressure area, a sprawling dome, a heat dome.
It's brought record-breaking fall temperatures across the territories and through Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. And Monday's forecast in Calgary is more of the same.
We see a temperature of 26 degrees. I mean, the normal high should be 12. That's 14 degrees warmer than normal, and will set an all-time record that goes back to the last century.
A prolonged summer in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's not just hot, it's also dry. Instead of rain, Vancouver residents are struggling with smoky skies and poor air quality, as fire crews across Western Canada battle an unusual amount of wildfires for this time of year.
For example, even right now we have 60 active wildfires across the province. One is classified as out of control, 26 are being held, and 33 are under control.
It's why there are fire bans or advisories in place throughout the region. Halloween fireworks activity will also have to be curtailed. The risk of ignition is just too great.
This is the second small fire that we've had this week, so we're really asking people to be vigilant when they're in the forested areas and be really careful.
It's a far cry from the situation facing BC nearly a year ago, when atmospheric rivers were bringing about catastrophic floods.
It's more likely in the future that we're going to see these types of patterns develop more frequently, or year in and year out.
With extreme weather becoming the pattern Canadians will soon come to expect, as Calgarians trade in their snow tires for sunscreen right now. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Change is coming to many city halls across British Columbia after a round of municipal elections saw a wave of new candidates beat out longtime incumbents. That includes the province's two biggest cities, where policing and housing were major factors. Catherine Urquhart reports.
An average 4 stranger assaults happen every day in Vancouver. Crime is a key concern, as is homelessness. A tent city now lines a section of the downtown core. After promising 100 new police officers and 100 mental health nurses, along with being endorsed by the police union, mayoral candidate Ken Sim and his ABC councillors swept to victory.
ABC Vancouver was born out of a desire for change, a desire to do politics differently.
Sim, Vancouver's first Chinese-Canadian mayor, says hiring more police officers is a priority.
One of the first things we will do is we will put a requisition in with the Vancouver Police Department to start the hiring process.
Policing was also a key issue in Surrey, BC's second largest city. Brenda Locke is now mayor-elect after promising to keep the RCMP in Surrey, reversing the ongoing transition to a municipal police force, which she had initially supported. On live TV, Locke boldly announced some members of the Surrey Police Service will be fired.
The senior officers will be losing their jobs, but that's only a very small number that are inspectors and the chief.
For current Mayor Doug McCallum, the loss comes just 2 weeks before he goes on trial to face a charge of public mischief after accusing a woman of driving over his foot in a dispute about policing in Surrey.
She clipped my knee and my bottom leg and then ran over my foot at the same time and then took off.
Whether in Surrey or Vancouver, policing is a pressing issue. Voters making it clear they're ready for change. Catherine Urquhart, Global News, Vancouver.
The new Premier of Alberta is capping off a controversial first week in office. Danielle Smith's claim that unvaccinated people receive worse discrimination than any other group in her lifetime sparked a flurry of reaction, including from one top doctor in Ontario. As Tom Vernon explains, he's using Smith's comments as a recruitment tool.
Hey, Toronto. Thinking about moving out of Ontario? Why not consider Alberta?
Alberta is calling with promises of higher wages and a lower cost of living. Although anyone who answered this week got a new message.
They have been the most discriminated against group that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime.
That's new Premier Danielle Smith's feelings about how unvaccinated Canadians have been treated during the pandemic. The comment spread quickly and was condemned just as fast. And now Ontario is calling back.
Come on down, we've got a job for you.
Alex Munter is the head of the Children's Hospital in Ottawa, and they're recruiting. Seeing an opportunity, he took to Twitter. Good morning, Alberta healthcare workers. We think racism is bad, immunization is good, and we love occupational health and safety. Come join us. And he's seeing some interest.
Even a handful of new recruits out of a tweet is pretty good return on investment.
The comment has also hit the pages of Forbes magazine with senior contributor and health policy professor Bruce Y. Lee calling the comments harmful.
It demeans people who have been suffering a lot of injustice. It makes it seem like it's not a big deal.
Premier Smith hasn't apologized, but said she never intended to trivialize the discrimination faced by minority communities and other persecuted groups. Still, NDP leader Rachel Notley says on her first day, the Premier has done immense harm to Alberta's reputation.
It is incumbent upon the new Premier to withdraw her comments and apologize, acknowledging that she was wrong.
Marketing professor David Soberman says this was definitely a misstep by the new Premier, but he doesn't believe the comments will derail Alberta's reputation.
Well, I think at the time it was pretty outrageous, but there's a lot of news every day, and within a couple of days I think this will be in the past.
Alberta's calling and is leaving a message. Tom Vernon, Global News.
Funeral arrangements have been announced for the police officers in Innisfil, Ontario, who were killed in the line of duty last week. Constables Morgan Russell and Devin Michael Northrup will be honoured at a joint funeral in Barrie, that's just north of Toronto, on Thursday morning. Beforehand, a procession will travel from two separate funeral homes to the arena. The ceremony will not be open to the public. The two officers were shot and killed while responding to a disturbance call at a home last Tuesday. The 23-year-old gunman was also killed. Well, weeks after Hurricane Fiona rocked Atlantic Canada, the Nova Scotia government is now taking aim at telecommunications companies, demanding more reliable connectivity during major emergencies. Fiona knocked out phone service for hundreds of thousands across that region, leaving many without the ability to communicate with emergency services. As Ross Lord reports, Nova Scotia is now looking to legislation to hold the telcos accountable.
Nova Scotians paid for cell phone service during Fiona's devastating sweep through the province, but they were paying for nothing. Adding to the stress of fearing for themselves and their properties, many discovered their cell phones didn't work.
We had no phone service. There was like a little pocket in the community where we could just about get a couple of bars.
Nothing at all. I couldn't get through or get text messages.
During the storm, if we needed help, we couldn't contact 911.
Atlantic Canada's leading phone provider, Bell, blamed a battery backup system that's supposed to keep its network running when power is knocked out.
Given the magnitude of the power outages and as well the duration of the storm, and thirdly, access to sites, unfortunately, some of our batteries exhausted.
Not good enough, according to Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston.
The message is do better. I mean, it's a critical service. We know that Nova Scotians need access to telecommunications, particularly in some of these situations that we found ourselves in over the last couple of weeks.
Nova Scotia's PC government is backing up its tough talk by imposing new regulations on phone providers. Requirements include an annual government-approved emergency response plan, physical attendance at emergency planning sessions, and a rebate to the customer for service disruptions. The Nova Scotia government says if telecoms don't comply, they could be hit with daily fines of up to $250,000. The telecommunications industry Canada-wide is still reeling from July's outage on the Rogers system that disrupted cell networks and payments for businesses. Rogers promises to spend at least $250 million to prevent future outages. Both Bell and Rogers referred our inquiries about the new regulations to the Canadian Wireless Telecommunications Association. The CWTA did not respond before our deadline. The Nova Scotia government says during Fiona, the service failure hampered emergency response. First responders and power crews were unable to communicate with each other or with coordination centers.
We know action needs to be taken. We'll start that process.
The federal government has also signaled it will take action, having already pressed for more accountability after the Rogers outage. Ross Lord, Global News.
To the United States now, and just weeks away from crucial midterm elections, early voting is already underway in some states. The balance of power in Washington is up for grabs as Democrats try to hold on to control of both the House and the Senate. But the soaring cost of living remains the biggest campaign issue as inflation hits its highest level in 40 years. Jennifer Johnson reports from Washington.
U.S. President Joe Biden on the campaign trail night after night as the balance of power in Washington teeters ahead of the midterm elections. In Oregon, the president was making the case his party is trying to help struggling Americans.
I wrote a thing called the Inflation Reduction Act. This year, the American people won. And for the first time, Big Pharma lost.
But economic losses for the average American are piling up. Stock market accounts are way down. Mortgage rates and consumer prices, like gas and groceries, are way up. A new Associated Press poll shows 63% of Americans disapprove of Biden's handling of the economy.
My wife and I are looking at retirement and trying to figure out how to do it in this economy, and it's challenging.
Democrats are hoping to hold on to control of the Senate, and at least two races are tight. In Georgia, incumbent Democrat Raphael Warnock is fighting off a strong challenge from Herschel Walker, despite the former football star's multiple scandals.
Can you tell me why he voted with Joe Biden 96% of the time?
And in Pennsylvania, Republican former talk show host Dr. Mehmet Oz is battling the state's lieutenant governor for another crucial seat.
This man has no core, and he'll say anything for a buck.
And while Americans traditionally vote their pocketbooks, Biden is hoping another hot-button issue, abortion rights, will galvanize their base.
His top economic priority is fighting inflation. But there's a very clear choice right now between the policies that we're advancing and the policies that have been put forward legislatively by our Republican friends in Congress.
Still, Democrats are concerned Republicans will end up controlling Congress, blocking Biden's agenda. Voters will have to decide if they can ride out this struggling economy or if there's more hope with Republican lawmakers in charge. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Coming up, fighting back. Russian-controlled regions of Ukraine come under renewed attack. Plus, losing Truss. The UK's embattled PM struggles to hold on to her new job. Welcome back. In the wake of Friday's deadly coal mine blast in Turkey, families of the victims are now demanding answers from government officials. Relatives claimed they reported being able to smell gas for more than a week before the explosion. Funerals continued today for some of the 41 miners killed in that blast. 11 others were injured, with at least 5 still in critical condition. The cause is still under investigation, but officials say early evidence points to a fire damp explosion. That can occur when methane mixes with air and fire. Turning now to the war in Ukraine, where the battle continues over Russian-occupied regions in the east. Today, a local government office in Russian-controlled Donetsk was struck by explosions, killing at least one person. Russian state media is blaming Ukrainian shelling, though Kyiv has not yet claimed responsibility. Meanwhile, Moscow's defense ministry claims they've dealt significant losses to Ukrainian troops, allegedly pushing back against Ukraine's advances to retake Kherson, Donetsk, and Mykolaiv regions. Iranian state media says at least 4 people were killed and more than 60 injured following a major fire at Tehran's notorious Evin prison. Protesters gathered outside the jail to demand answers from state officials, whom they say are hiding the true death toll and the cause of the blaze. That facility, which houses many of Iran's political prisoners, was engulfed by fire last night, following weeks of anti-government protests across the country. Gunshots and explosions could also be heard coming from the site. State media, which aired footage of some of the damage, has suggested the fire is not linked to those ongoing protests. Liz Truss's short time as British Prime Minister may already be coming to a close, with more MPs joining the calls for her to resign. Senior Conservatives will be meeting on Monday for so-called rescue mission talks. Some MPs want newly appointed Chancellor Jeremy Hunt to take over as PM. Hunt ripped up Truss's controversial tax plan, saying she went too far, too fast. In Beijing, stern words from China's leader Xi Jinping during his opening speech at the Communist Party's Congress. In the nearly 2-hour address, Xi boasted about achieving full control over Hong Kong and refusing to renounce using force to unify with Taiwan. He also defended China's strict zero-COVID policy, saying it put lives above all else. The summit of 2,300 party delegates is also expected to break with tradition and award Xi a 3rd term in power. Still ahead, the concerning connection between video games and heart conditions in children. Health experts have long warned about the risks of inactivity for people who spend hours sitting at home playing video games. But a new study suggests an even more alarming link between video games and cardiac arrest. Kristen Robinson has the details.
Oh, that's why. Gaming is part of growing up for billions of kids. But a new study has discovered a link between video games and a potentially deadly heart rhythm.
This study is a small sample, and it's an early signal that in some children, I think in certain populations, video games can be dangerous.
The head of pediatric cardiology at BC Children's Hospital, among the researchers who found 22 cases around the world where children blacked out while gaming. 6 or 27% experienced cardiac arrest, and 4 or 18% died suddenly. All of the kids were aged 7 to 16, 19 or 86% were male. Multiplayer war games were the most frequent trigger.
I don't know if that just represents the proportion of games that are being played anyways. So is that a normal sample or is that a skewed sample? So it's, we don't have enough data to really, ascertain that.
The report, published in Heart Rhythm, found a proarrhythmic cardiac diagnosis was known in 7 or 31% of the children before they lost consciousness, and was established afterward in 12 or 54%.
I think we have to start thinking about treating video games as a much more exciting activity than we've been acknowledging, and so probably talking about it and that there is some risk. Video games are probably safe for the vast majority of people. These inherited heart rhythm conditions are rare.
The bottom line, high-risk players Dr. Shubayan Sanatani says should take precautions before engaging in the electronic war zone. Kristen Robinson, Global News.
Up next, talking trash, the remarkable relationship between an Alberta toddler and his garbage collector. Welcome back. Taking out the trash can be dirty work, but an Alberta community just west of Calgary is getting some unlikely help with their garbage from a toddler. Jill Croteau has more on a 3-year-old's heartwarming affinity for waste management.
This toddler knows his trash. Right after Nolan took his first steps, his fascination with garbage trucks was undeniable.
I'm gonna hit the bin.
He's nowhere near as big as the bins, but he maneuvers them all out to the alley every Thursday night. And then bright and early Friday morning, he waits.
Daddy, Daddy, get off the road, I saw them.
And watches.
Look, Mom.
But the anticipation is for more than just those machines he's come to adore. It's the man behind the wheel.
Good morning.
Clint Jack is his garbage man.
How was your weekend?
My weekend was awesome. Thank you for asking.
And the connection between them is about the purest thing ever.
There's a friendship there. He's a good kid. I do believe he called me his best friend, which is pretty cool. I really love that. I really love that.
He's my best friend.
Their attachment to each other has been endearing to watch develop.
It's a good feeling. You know, look, he looks out for me, and you know, every week I try to make him happy.
It's never an obligation for Clint. He always takes time to indulge this little boy's every request.
Can we pick up a bin?
Of course you can.
And what he gets in return is gratitude beyond words.
To know that there are still people who will take the time to entertain a 3-year-old who has a serious obsession with garbage trucks is it's remarkable, and we're so thankful that he gets to experience that, and he has people like that in his life who show him true kindness.
To have somebody, a complete stranger, show love and affection for our son is
it's incredible.
It melts our heart.
Oh, he's there.
It's a bond they all expect he'll likely outgrow, but until that day comes, they will cherish every moment.
Have a good day.
Do I get a high five? Oh, good.
Jill Croteau, Global News.
One toddler's trash is another's treasure. Great work, Nolan. That is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is Lake Erie from Rock Point Provincial Park in Ontario. We'd love to see your Canada, so please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Donna Friesen will be back at the anchor desk with you tomorrow.